Welcome, everyone, to the Warriors in Business podcast. We are super excited that y'all are tuning in today to hear this awesome interview that we are about to have with Jason Nazarenko. Jason is a military veteran and entrepreneur, and we got the chance to talk with him before the show and hear some great stories and all that he's involved in. And we're excited for all that you're going to be hearing throughout this time. So I'm Jordan, one of the hosts for this show, and I'm also joined by Todd, my co-host. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to this interview and hearing Jason's story and all the cool stuff he's got going on. So I'm excited.
Yes, absolutely. And without further ado, Jason, how are you, sir?
Jordan, I am doing great. And for you and Todd, thanks again for having me out here. I really appreciate what you guys are doing for our military veterans and first responder community. Just really appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, we're delighted and honored to have you join us on the show today. And as well, I would like to thank you for your service to our country. Thank you so much for your sacrifice, all the years that you put in protecting our communities and our country. And we are delighted to have you join us today, sir.
Yes, we are.
Well, hey, it's my pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it.
Definitely. Absolutely. So, well, let's start things off with a very easy question. Jason, tell us a bit about yourself, about your service history, and what eventually led you to becoming an entrepreneur.
You bet. So I'll take us back to 1996 when I joined the service. My wife and I, we were already married. So 1996, left this little town that I'm back in actually, and went off to the great big world of the Army. I joined as a cook, and I can tell you there wasn't a ton of thought process that went into picking that job. I had a laundry list of jobs that I could have picked, but I picked a cook because I figured I would never be cold and never be hungry. And so those were important things to me back then. So I had a blast with it. I did that for about 8 years, kind of excelled at that. And but I saw myself doing something different. So I applied for the Warrant Officer Flight Training program that they had in the Army and was accepted. And so found out I was accepted for that on a trip back from Iraq. Went off to Warrant Officer School and then subsequently after that, flight school. And then started a new career flying helicopters. Did that... Did it for a couple years, deployed with the unit out of Fort Campbell, 159th, to a trip in Afghanistan, and then I applied once again, decided there was something different I needed to try, and I applied for and assessed favorably for, and then selected for the 160th Special Operations out of Fort Campbell as well. So then I did that for the last 9+ years in the Army until I retired back in October 2019.
Okay, I've got to ask that's a lot of information really quick. So you went from, let me sum that up. You went from cooking a lot of scrambled eggs to flying helicopters. Did I hear that correctly?
Right. That's right.
What was that time span like between literally cooking some amazing eggs and all of a sudden you're flying helicopters?
The total time is about a year. Flight school is about a year. Warrant Officer School, if I remember right, was a couple months. It went pretty fast. So a little over a year from cook to from the kitchen to the cockpit, I like to say.
That's good. That's a great journey there.
Okay, that's a good line, by the way, from the kitchen to the cockpit. Okay, I love that. We're definitely going to use that.
No, that's some great stuff. So from 1996 until 2019, you had mentioned?
Yep, 2019. I got out right in the end of 2018 and then officially retired. It was 2019. So October 2019 was my official retirement.
So when you did that, you come back and you transition back into civilian society, right? And that transition time, that's obviously, I did not serve, so I did not go through it, but I can only just appreciate to some extent, you have these life decisions, right? You've been in the military for many years, and all of a sudden, what do I do with my life, right? Kind of thing,
right.
Like post-military life, I should say. So what, can you share with the audience, like, what were you going through? Like, what were you thinking about, talking to your wife about, or whatever those conversations were in your own mind, in your own brain, and private conversations, and how did that kind of lead you? Because that's a point in life to where you've got to, most likely, at least most people have to generate income and provide for their family and themselves. And so you go down the employee route, you go to the entrepreneurship route, kind of share what happened during that period of time in your life, if you don't mind.
No, you bet. That's a great question because that is, that transition period for service members and for anyone can be, daunting. And at the time of my transition, the way it actually was working was I was finishing up some schooling at the time. I was working on my doctorate, and the focus that I was setting up for my dissertation was the career veterans transition process, and just how that all worked. And through the research that I was doing on how veterans were transitioning, different programs that were out there, that was what really triggered me to say, hey, this might be a good time for me to transition myself as well. And so I really started doing research, looked into different programs. As I mentioned, there's a Hiring Our Heroes program. I got hooked up with that. That's through the National Chamber of Commerce, which was, an excellent program for kind of your senior veterans as they were coming out. I actually got linked up with Walmart on that because it was a good fit for me from what I could see coming out of the military. I was going to come close to home. Bentonville is only a few hours from where I grew up in
Right.
Cotter, so it looked like it was going to be a good fit. But there was a gauntlet of questions that my wife and I didn't really have the answers to that we were going to figure out. And we went from everything to, hey, we're just going to live in a camper and travel, to, hey, let's go to Dubai, or hey, let's go do
Wow.
this. We
Yeah.
thought through a lot of different, COAs, I guess you could say, courses of action, but
Mhm.
we landed on coming back home for a couple specific reasons. And sometimes life gets a vote, and we don't actually see that vote until the cards are all laid down.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, in fact, some of the conversations and surveys we've done have showed, we've asked individuals like yourself, over the last couple of years, like how long did it take before you did that, transition? And one of the highest groups of, like less than 1 year, 1 to 3 year, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7, 7 plus. And the number one group that we found with the highest number or percentage of people after transitioning out that decided to go into entrepreneurship was in that 1 to 3 year mark. And I
Mhm.
think you just hit the nail on the head, which is you come out of the service and do we go to Dubai? Do we travel, America in a camper, an RV, or it's all of that conversation, like as in what do we really want to do? And I think it's probably natural for a lot of people to really not have that clear plan because, wow, I can't even appreciate and imagine how much of a transition that is. So it's very fascinating to me, and it sounds like kind of what you went through. What time frame? So from the time that you actually transition out and you were going through all of these with your spouse and yourself and thinking, what are we going to do? How long did it take before you finally started to go to life started happening to you, as you said, where all of a sudden it started taking you down a certain path? And what was that path?
You bet. Like, so we had, when we finally landed on, hey, we're going to move back home towards, Cotter, and we're going to go to Bentonville, going to, work a corporate job with Walmart. We were working, I was doing the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship. That was the plan. And then life, threw its cards, and my mom ended up passing away unexpectedly right in the middle of that. And so that was a
Sorry to hear
big,
that.
wild card. So
Hmm.
that was like, when we're home here with family, preparing for the funeral and everything, it made me kind of realize, hey, we have the ability coming out of the service with a retirement. We're this area that we live in, low median income, so it's kind of like we could make it here with our retirement if we had to. And so that's when I just kind of leaned over to my wife one night when we were laying in bed, and I said, "What would you think about just moving back home to Cotter instead of near home? We actually come home." And she
Yeah.
was in love with it. I could tell by kind of the demeanor that she showed that she was in love with the idea better than any other ideas we had had. So I was like, well, I don't exactly know what I'll do for a job, but I know that we'll be just fine. We'll figure it out. We've always been able to figure things out really well. So and we've been truly blessed coming back home. I was able to transition into another flying job. There was a job with Aerovac. So I fly the helicopter. That's my main W-2 job, flying the helicopter with Aerovac. But it gives me tons of time on my own, working a week on, week off schedule.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with those kind of EMS type schedules,
Sure.
that's what allowed us to have so much time for that entrepreneurship bug that was hitting us to hey, let's get this business started. Let's use our time wisely and turn our side hustle into our main gig someday. And so that's where we are now is, still working that W-2, but working that side hustle more and more. And eventually that transition will happen again. So.
No, that's awesome. And so, okay, so you mentioned a side hustle. What was that side hustle that eventually became more than just a side hustle?
You bet. So when we moved back home, like I said, we retired. My mom passed away. We moved back home. We did, what probably was the craziest thing. I remember my father telling me, "Don't do it, Jay. Don't do it." We ended up buying this 4,000 square foot dilapidated building. On the inside, it was terrible. It was arguably uninhabitable. There were people that had been living in it, but the owners finally got everybody out and just said, "Just sell it." I like to say it was just shy of a crack house because it wasn't a crack house, but it could have fit that bill for that by any
Yeah.
stretch. But
Yeah.
we bought that and we did a full gut renovation. And I say we got on board with an awesome contractor. I kind of used some skills and some ideas to be able to get in connection with a good contractor that we could trust because some of the construction was going on while we were still in Tennessee, hadn't actually left, the military. Got the mass of it finished before we actually got out of the service and got over here to, Arkansas. And then we just had to work to get it completed. And that building, it was a fourplex. We were turning it into a threeplex, turning two apartments upstairs into one apartment that we would live in. And then we were going to be renting the downstairs apartments. So that drove me to learning what can I do for these two apartments? How can I optimize this? And so that's when I really got into the entrepreneurship side of it because I looked at it like I need to treat this as a business and not a hobby. If I treat it as a business, we can scale it and we can optimize it. And that's exactly what we did.
That's really cool. Right now, kind of during this phase, it makes me, think of something that's a very popular topic, and this is just in entrepreneurship in general. And I'm sure and 100% certain it's going to, be important to your fellow MVFR business owners listening to this podcast, and that is the question of capital. Without trying to get too personal, all of a sudden you're doing this on the side, kind of okay. We've got our crack house. Just kidding. We've got this building that we're gonna make better. It's a hobby, and now all of a sudden we're gonna turn it into a business. That requires capital. Like any business requires capital infusion in order to grow, to start and then grow a business. So if you don't mind us asking, how again, you don't have to get too detailed, but just generally speaking. Do you mind sharing with the audience, like how you capitalize that? Are you, was it just self? Was it third parties? Was it people? Was it, SBA? Like what did you go through to figure out how are we going to actually grow this business and infuse capital?
Yep, you bet. And I mean, and we're still going through that because there's many iterations of it. But back then, with this building, and I should mention this fourplex, when we cleared the garbage off the front of it, we got to really actually see the beauty in the building, and the structure itself was gorgeous. The history behind it was neat. And
cool.
it has a label on the very top of it called Potter Block, and that's where we got the name for our business of potterblock.com.
Cool.
And Potter Block Properties. But this, as far as, to your point, Todd, about the capital, we learned along the way incredibly fast. And what we did, we got out of the service. We weren't really in debt. We had a little bit of money. We had stuff that we sold in Tennessee right before we were getting out. We had a massive yard sale. I mean, I was selling everything, four-wheelers, tractors, because I was moving to the big city of Cotter. There's a population here of 650 people or something like that. So, but I was moving to the big city and leaving an area. So I was selling everything that I didn't need. And so when we bought that building, we paid cash for the building, and then we bankrolled everything ourselves until we got to about needing paint on the walls. The drywall was finished. We didn't owe anybody any money, but we didn't have any money left. And so we were a long way from the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And
Typical
it was
for a lot of businesses, by the way, they get in the middle of it and realize, hey, we need more capital.
That's right. And that was when I learned a huge important thing about capital and going to the banks. That is not the time to go to the bank when you're halfway, or not even half. I don't even call it 50% done, but when you're part of the way done with your project. And I went to a bank. I went to a couple of them, local banks, and the majority of them were just like, hey, sounds good. Once you get it finished, let us know. We'll refinance it with you. And I was just like, I don't have the money to finish it. I can't this is going to take me forever, the rest of my lifetime. I figured I figured you'd be happy with me coming to the table with this building that I've, started to rebuild and everything is paid for, but that isn't how you do it. Luckily, I found an awesome bank. It's First Security Bank local here to
Yeah.
Arkansas only, and worked with them. They saw the potential, and I still work with this commercial banker, good friend of mine. We've had him over for dinner and everything. He saw the potential where other people didn't. Other people thought, hey, you're crazy, and this will just fall apart eventually. He gave me the business loan. The bank, went out on a limb, gave us the business loan, and we finished that property strong with I put together the, budget to complete, and we stuck with it. We never went over budget for that, that loan that we took. But that was when we really started to scale. And so then, more capital was going to be needed because we went from having those 2 apartments downstairs. Within 2 years, we had a portfolio over $1 million. And so
wow.
we scaled really fast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's great. So just to recap on you looking for capital. So you learned a lesson along the way that, going or getting into something midway through your project, through your dream, is not the best time to look for capital.
Right.
It's probably earlier on. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. If you go, way before, because since then I've actually started to work with the SBA on other businesses that we're starting to get, going, that we have other plans. And so there's a lot better ways to do it than starting to, bankroll everything and then go to ask for money. You need to ask for money first. And the local lenders are great. They're great to work with. Right now, obviously, there's some challenges that are out there that you're going to have to deal with, but there's not saying that it's impossible. Nothing is ever impossible. You've just got to have a good plan put together, and then a lender that's willing to work with you. So obviously you got to have a decent track record, decent, credit, something that you can show them. But
Right.
really what you learn about, and what I learned, was these local lenders, they're not investing in your project. They're investing in you. They're investing in you as a person because they believe in you.
That's a great point, and I'm going to chime in here because I am, over the last 30 years, the majority of that time has been in the what's called the payments and acquiring space. But mixed in there, I'm a former commercial banker as well. And I will tell you, what you pulled off is actually, I tip my hat to you because you pulled it off. And that's not an easy feat. And let me just kind of expound upon that just a little bit, not to go in the weeds. But, lenders, especially you have your nationals, you have your regionals, and you have your community banks and or credit unions, right? And the nationals, you go to them with a scenario like that, and all you are is an account number. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. They have their systems in place. Doesn't matter. Regionals, almost pretty much the same. Your community-based lenders, and that's who I used to work for in my banking days. Actually, I work for large ones, and I work for small community banks as well too. And you do have to find somebody that they look at you. So if you had walked into my bank office when I was back, in banking back in, last time was 08 and 09, and I would have said, wait, you're in the middle of this? Well, how do I know that there's not lien holders? How do I know you haven't paid all the contractors? There's a whole lot of reasons to say no on that. So the fact that you got them to approve you and to buy into you as a person, which I'm sure that was easy, but then buying into being a lien holder and funding that is amazing. So the lesson in that I can share objectively is, from with my banker hat on, is don't give up. You have to sell yourself. You have to have a really good plan. You have to be really consistent, because what you found is not the norm. It's the exception, but you can do it if you persist at it. So that's a tough feat. So my congratulations to you. And it's a fantastic story, because for that one story that you just told me, I can literally tell you 800 that go the other way, 1,000 easy that go the other way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's great information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely attest. I know that, obviously, to your point about the liens and stuff, of course we had to, I had to come up with letters from anyone who had touched the building, any contractor saying, hey, we're paid in full, he owes nothing up to this point, and of course we took all that in strides. But yeah, that was, I got no's first. That wasn't the first bank I went to. There was other places that I had already, hit up, and they were just like, sounds good, but no. And
I would have been really impressed if you got it on shot number one. I would have even been more impressed. Yeah. So
Yeah, definitely. So once you had obtained the loan and had finished the construction and had scaled it, of course. So are you renting these places out now and generating revenue, or what's the current status of that particular project for you?
Yep, we still are. So what we ended up doing was we lived upstairs in that top floor. We lived upstairs for about 2 years, and it wasn't when you say 2 years, a lot of people in the real estate investing space will say, okay, well, so that was the 2 years. That way you can season it, you could sell it, and not have to pay the cap gains. We didn't sell it. I wasn't a buy and sell person. I was a buy and hold, and still am. And we weren't wanting to fix and flip. We were really looking at generating like a long-term portfolio is what we're doing. So we started renting the two downstairs right away, and then last year we moved out of that house, purchased another house up the road, and that's where we live now. Same town, just a few streets up. And in that, like in the middle there, I'm kind of skipping quite a few houses that we purchased, but there was, I think,
Okay.
5 or 6 other acquisitions that we purchased and then rehabbed and then put on the market as rentals as well. So right now we're in the
Wow.
short-term rental space. Like all of our spaces are short-term rentals. We have the ability, if the market changes and we need to shift or pivot, we can. I have that as a fallback plan. We can, change every one of them into a long-term, and they work perfectly as a long-term. So um, we have tons of options.
Yeah, no, that's great, and especially scaling it to acquiring more houses for that, and growing the business with that. Do you? I presume that you probably have a staff that works for you now, or at least others, to be able to manage these multiple properties.
Yep, we sure do. So what we did is, early on, I talked to my wife because it started with just her and I, and as we did it, we did everything. We did the back end, the front end, and I told her, I said, we need systems and processes for everything we do, and down to folding the sheets, turning the properties. She created systems for that. I created systems and processes for the front side, the what the customer sees, what the guest sees, and the communications. I set those up, and then we just started hiring folks in. We were blessed to have our daughter join us, so she joins us now as our operations manager,
That's
and
awesome.
so she handles all of the guest communications. She handles the cleaners. She handles the payroll. She works really well with us, and then we've got quite a few cleaners. I think we're up to nine cleaners now that work for us on our team, and that's the main part of our team is the cleaners. And then we just set up that system for easy turnovers, which that allows us to scale. We
Gotcha.
just new property, put in the systems and processes, and we're ready to go.
And so just to be clear on that, you started with this, with the rental property and, remodeling the property, renting it out, generating revenue. And then that led to, along that path, it led to, hey, these have to be cleaned. And all of a sudden you realize, opportunities came along the way to where you're able to clean other people's properties as well too. So you got
Exactly.
just kind of that's fascinating. Again, I say this in other episodes, paths of opportunity revealed. And that simply means where you go down, you just start doing it. You start doing things. And until you do things, you don't even realize where all the opportunities are. You just have to go do it. Most people, most aspiring entrepreneurs, and this has been held true for the 10, 15,000, entrepreneurs that I've talked to, and a lot of ones that want to be an entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, they get stuck on the, they think about it, they dream about it, they talk about it, but they don't do it.
Right.
They never put it into motion. And if you don't put something in motion, then you just can't do it. It's kind of like when young people are, I don't know what I don't know what kind of career I want. So maybe they come out of the service, or maybe they come out of college or high school. I don't know what I want to do. And like I always told my children, it's like, you go do something. If you don't know what you want to do for sure, go do something, and you start figuring out what you don't want to do, right? And that leads you to a path of what you do want to do. So that's one thing. I've got to ask you this because something you said really hit home a while ago that I've got to go backwards to. And I'm going to ask you this because one of our most recent podcasts, we had a really fun guy that we were talking to, and we asked him about, or he was talking about, the path when he was going to entrepreneurship. And I can't remember the question, but it was along the lines of, the discussion was about whether or not you work something where your financially keeps your overhead covered, and then you have a side gig until that side gig pays enough to where it's equal or greater than your main thing, and then you can flip to full time. Now, you made the comment that you kind of did it that way. You had the W-2, and then you started building it. He made the comment, and he said something like, clinically, I would tell you that that would be the right way to do it. So that way you're not financially hurting. But then he said on the flip side, but me personally, I'm the one that's going to say you got to go all in. If you're not all in, then you're never going to really build it big enough and fast enough. Now, this is just simply a difference of opinion because I have my own opinion, but it's not about my opinion right now. You made that comment. So do you, hearing that one of your fellow veteran peers that he's an all-in guy, you went down the path of, okay, W-2, started this on the side and then started building that. So what would you say to the audience? Because these are just simply difference of opinions.
You bet. And I think every situation you're never gonna. I don't think you can say this is the way to do it. And I would say to anyone, every situation is different. My W-2 job, as I mentioned, I got day on, day off schedule, or excuse me, week on, week off schedule. So I got a whole week where I can work on that side hustle, and I'm still getting a paycheck from that, that W-2. I do a lot of times I say to myself, boy, I wish I would just pull out of the W-2 and go in, all in. But I know that if I do, it's going to take me longer to get to that finish line because of that capital. Going, to your point with the bankers, when I stand in front of a bank and I ask for, hey, I'm looking for another couple $100,000 for this or whatever, here's this other property I want. I've got a lot of feathers in my hat with them when I've got that W-2 because that's guaranteed payments that's coming in, and so
that's a good point.
I'm easy to lend to, and if I take that out of the equation, obviously my debt to income ratio or my debt service ratio, however you want to look at it, is gonna be askew, and it's gonna be a little bit harder for me to get that money. So situation dependent, and I know that stinks to hear because it's like, hey, I just want a quick, fast answer a lot of times, but every person's got to make their own decision. And I wrote this down as something to say to people that have a side hustle. I encourage people, don't quit your main job too early. You'll know when the right time is there to quit and move on to that side hustle and give that 100%. And you'll know it because everything will feel right. And it's, you're going to figure it out. We're all with that mindset for, all of your veterans, your first responders. We are go people. We are, never quit. We're going to finish it. We're going to figure it out. We're going to build a parachute on the way down. Every little analogy that you want to say, we're going to figure it out. And so you can be a success whether you've got that W-2 or not. But sometimes having that W-2, like in my case, that W-2 has helped for sure.
Gotcha. No, and that is fascinating, and it doesn't have to be a black and white answer. There can be a gray area with it, because as Todd mentioned, it is a difference of opinion, and everyone's situation perhaps may be different. Also, it's not only on the, you mentioned going to the bank and saying, hey, I'm looking for this loan to build out this property. I have a W-2. I am getting income right now, so that kind of works more in your favor. So not only is there that to consider, but also you'd have to sell it to your wife, sell it to your spouse of, hey, babe, I have, one of two options. I can either keep the W-2 and work on the side hustle on the side, or I'm just going to, quit the W-2, go all in. And then she's like, well, what about our monthly income? Like it's gone now. Like, I mean, up until you build it up.
I can attest that is a big deal.
That's a big deal, right? So, so I think it's good to get multiple perspectives on this one, because it is something that a lot of entrepreneurs face, and especially when they're chasing their dreams, is like, well, how do I get to it in the fastest way possible? At least that's one of the first ways of thinking about it. Right. But you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot along the way getting to it.
Balancing fast and safe.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So Jason, I want to ask you this next question. As you had mentioned, you started with the one property, and then eventually, fast forward a little bit, had bought a few more homes, built a team out, scaled, put systems and processes in place. Along the way, and even up until now, what are some of the top challenges that you have consistently faced that you have overcome, or maybe you learned to manage by now? But what are some of those top challenges that you faced?
Well, I'd say to Todd's point way back when we started, capital is. Everyone is going to say capital. That's one of the biggest challenges that anybody's going to face. And of course, there's ways to figure it out, but there's no difference there for me. So capital was a challenge that we had to work through for every project, and even the one we're on right now. I mean, I look at numbers daily of what it's going to take to finish the hotel that I'm working on now. But so capital, I would say, is a challenge that is always something that's going to be in the back of your mind with any entrepreneur. But the other one that I think is really big is understanding your value, understanding the value that you provide to your guests, to your customers, to your clients, whatever that be. Because if you don't understand your value, someone else is going to put a dollar value on your time.
Good point.
And you need to
Yeah,
establish
good
that
point.
ahead of time so that you can know what you're worth.
That's a great point. A great point. So, and that's great information. What would you say, Jason, is, you look back and, it hasn't been an incredibly long, amount of time since you've, transitioned out of the military. But when you look back just on the entrepreneur career that you have, that you've been on, what would you say is something you're most proud of? And on a subsequent question, well, actually, let me let you answer the first question first, then I'll ask you one more thing behind it. I'll
You
do a
bet. I
follow-up.
think the thing that my wife and I both are super proud of is everything that we did. We never got into anything like, we are entrepreneurs. We started this business. We did not do this with dollar signs in our sight glass. We did this. All of this was stemming around really renovating the town, fixing up our town, bringing our town into the best, or the best current version of its own self. Our town was dilapidated. I mean, many buildings look just like this little, rough place that we got. And now, when you walk around the town, there's a huge shift. We've inspired a lot of people. So I think that's the thing that I'm the
That's
most proud
cool.
of
That's very
is,
cool.
being an ambassador for change in our community.
That's fantastic. Love that answer.
Yeah, I'd really love to hear that. Todd, was there another
Well, I
part
was
to
just
that
going to
question?
say,
Yeah.
when it comes to, again, making that decision when you're at that watershed moment in your life, entrepreneurship versus W-2. Now, you did it, you've done both. And so you were able to walk that tightrope, which is really cool. But it sounds like, from what I can hear, entrepreneurship is, a big part of your life. And it sounds like it's going to be moving forward. Do you regret going the entrepreneurship path versus a W-2 only path?
Not at all. Not at all.
Great. I mean, think about these aspiring entrepreneurs. There's some listening maybe right now or in the future listening to this podcast, and they're aspiring entrepreneurs, simply meaning I'm ready to make that decision and I really want to do this, but should I? Like, what
Mhm.
would you tell them if you were sitting down at a coffee bar having a coffee or a beer?
I would say look at the statistics. Statistics show that veterans, military first responders, we are the backbone of the communities for the small businesses. We have a higher percentage across the board that are success, stories. And it's because of that, never quit, can do attitude. We have the traits that it takes to create businesses that benefit our community and our families.
We totally agree with that, and that's kind of why we do this podcast, right, Jordan? So,
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
so we concur. We concur.
Honestly, to hear the passion and enthusiasm that you have for it now, like there's no regret, there's no looking back, all barrels going forward, like that's
Yep.
very encouraging.
And we've got, we're a team of teams. We really are, the veteran community, the first responder community, it is a family oriented community, and we're here to help each other. So you've got a safety net back behind you that is pushing you forward, encouraging you, whereas so many people on the, in the civilian sector, we'll call it, they're there to watch you fall. They're there to hear your
Yeah,
failure
yeah.
stories, and
Yeah.
and your community is there behind you saying, hey, you got this, you can do this. What can we do to help?
Yeah, and that's
So,
exactly why why one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is because we're hoping that words, from Jason and from all of our other people that we have interviewed and continue to interview, are going to resonate so that they can get educated, they can get motivated. Just hearing that, sometimes that's enough of what they need, number one, to actually get them to act and start moving forward, and also to know that there are a lot of people, their peers, MVFR, business owner peers, that, because you're not the first one who said this, that would be willing to, offer advice, encouragement, things like that, reach out for help. And we're hoping to help just be some little small part of people's lives to where we can help build this community so that people know how to contact other people, listen, get encouraged, connect whenever they need to connect, and so on and so forth. So we really appreciate those encouraging words very much.
yeah, definitely.
Yes, sir. And Jason, we have heard some incredible things today. We're so grateful for everything that you've shared, and I know that our audience, our military, veteran, first responder community, will have a lot to chew on from all the wisdom and all the advice that you've given here. So, with that said, how can people get in contact with you? This is your chance to plug your business and anything else that you'd like to share this time.
You bet. So the easiest way to contact me or reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. Our website is www.potterblock. That's POTTER block BLOCK.com altogether. And you can go there. We've got premier vacation rentals over here in Cotter, Arkansas. So you can come down, fish the beautiful White River, the Norfolk River, and stay in the best homes around. And, they're veteran owned and operated. We've got a great team. They're meticulously cleaned. And I would venture to say you'll have a hard time finding a better value anywhere else.
You had me at fishing. So
I was about to say that there.
No joke. I don't know when we are going to get to, but I guarantee you we're going to come do that. So we personally look forward to that.
I look forward to meeting you in person, Todd and Jordan. I really do.
That'd be a lot of
yes,
fun.
Sir. No, we'd love to. I haven't been fly fishing in quite some time, so that would be a great time to do it again. So, with all that said, Jason, we've been honored and delighted to have you join us today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and just want to say thank you again for your service to our country and for all your efforts that you're doing now for your local town and community. Giving back to those people there. So, thank you once again.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate it. Both of you, Jordan and Todd. Thank you.
So to all of our listeners, this is the Warriors in Business podcast. Stick around for the last few minutes. Todd and I are going to talk for a little bit about some of the main highlights from this interview here, and just to give our own personal take on it. So stay tuned. There's more to come.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Man, that was a great conversation we had with Jason. I love that guy. Yeah, full of energy, enthusiasm. I love his story of going from kitchen to cockpit.
That was so cool. I mean, just think about that. Literally, he was a cook, and he's flying helicopters, and about 5 minutes later, that just blows my mind. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess his desire to go from comfortable, warm setting to helicopter pilot, that something happened. There was a big change there. That's to go from one to the other.
Yes.
Well, we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of the main highlights that stuck out to me and Todd here, and just to give our own personal thoughts on it. And one of the first things that I wanted to bring up was when we were asking Jason about those who would choose to go all in for becoming an entrepreneur, taking a side hustle and making it the main one, versus having a W-2 job and building up a side hustle on the side. I really appreciated Jason's insight on that. And, he went down the path of having a W-2 and a side hustle. And, obviously he was allowed to have the time to build up that side hustle. So his situation was unique. But again, this wasn't a, black and white answer. It's, there are differences of opinion here, and everyone's situation perhaps will be different. So I really appreciated his thoughts on that, which I think a lot of people will definitely want to hear. What do I do in this situation? That type of thing.
It was good advice because, some people just have to do certain things. In other words, if you have to, pay your mortgage or your rent or food on the table, then you have to do it. So I don't think there's no right or wrong, no black or white. It's all subject to, whatever your circumstances are. So I think what he said was excellent advice.
Yes, it surely was. So secondly, one of the other highlights I wrote down here, and I'm going to ask you, being the former banker,
oh boy,
in terms of accessing capital or finding capital for building up your business as an entrepreneur. Jason gave us some interesting insight into that. Of when he started looking was a challenge for him, but he eventually made it happen. What would you, as Mr. Former Banker, what would you say? What would you advise for people looking for capital? Just from your perspective.
You can't start too soon. That's first and foremost. You just have to capitalize your business. And too many businesses in the past, went down the path and they ran out of funds. It's one of the top reasons why businesses go under is because they're undercapitalized. So he had a success story, was able to do it in the middle, which was fantastic. But generally speaking, you've got to figure that out. We've done a lot of surveys over the past few years. Number one, funding for MVFR business owners was actually personal finances, family, friends. Number two was some type of government loan, government assistance type thing. So there's a lot of resources that I encourage everyone to go on. We have a lot on our Join Bravery website, which I'm sure you'll talk about here in a minute. It's joinbravari.com. On the Bravery Online Marketplace, there's a resources page that has a lot of information about that. So really find out, what your service history actually gets you, any type of aid or assistance and or just advice, and really take advantage of all those things. But you can't look for capital too early, too soon, and you can usually not have too much. So start immediately.
Yes, definitely. And that was also Jason's takeaway at the same time too, just him looking back on it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that really stuck out, just to briefly mention here, he expressed how those that are the military, veteran, first responders have a can-do attitude, that they will find a way to make it happen no matter what, even if it means having to build a parachute on the way down. I love that phrase. Building the parachute on the way down if you absolutely have to, but they'll find a way to make it happen, which I think is a defining quality for the military, veteran, first responder community, and why they're so inspiring and encouraging to all of us too.
They're part of their DNA.
Absolutely, yeah, built deeply into them. And lastly, one of the things that Jason mentioned, one of the top challenges besides access to capital, was understanding your value. And I think what he meant by that was being able to define who you are and what you bring to your customer base. And something that was really interesting was he said, being able to understand and define your value before others define it for you. And I thought that was very insightful, because it allows you to define your business clearly, your expectations and your standards clearly, and that way others perceive that and will become better supporters of that, as opposed to being defined by somebody else telling you who you are.
Yeah, it's a great point, and you have to put value on what you bring to the table. And that also relates to time. Time is the great equalizer, and no one has any more or any less in any given day. And you have to value your time. So not only the value of who you are and what you bring to other people, benefits to other people, but value your time. And because if you don't use your time wisely, other people will use your time wisely. I mean, I've struggled with that in the past. Everyone I know in business has struggled with that. You start diving into the weeds, you start, hamster on a wheel, and all of a sudden you realize I'm not getting anywhere. And it's because you don't appreciate your time, or you let too many people in that want to take your time, where you may not really have to do that. And you have to learn to delegate. You have to learn to say no. So you really have to be cautious with your time, and you have to value your time when related to your business, because again, there's only so much time in the day, in each day, and there's only so many things you can get done, and you have to think about moving your business forward every single day. Pivot, change, be flexible, but moving forward every single day, or you're going to realize you're on a hamster wheel.
Well, those were some of the main highlights that we wanted to take a few minutes to talk about today. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in to this episode for the Warriors in Business podcast. And if you are, wherever you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe to our channel and share with your friends and family. You could also go to warriorsinbusiness.com, stay up to date with the latest news and updates as it pertains to the podcast. And as well, as Todd hinted at earlier, for the Bravery Online Marketplace, please go to joinbravery.com. That's joinbravari.com. to sign up for your free business listing for the Bravery Online Marketplace, the one-stop hub for all military, veteran, and first responder businesses. And so, yes, once again, go to joinbravery.com and sign up for your free business listing. I'm Jordan, and Todd has been my co-host for this episode today. We're grateful that y'all tuned in. And until next time, God bless, and y'all be good.
Thanks.
Like a sickness running through my veins. It's a force that's pulling on the reins. My